Sacrifice, and this is a strange, intense, and haunting movie. I saw people who actually broke down in tears after seeing it, and I knew how they felt. The movie is an international production directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, a Russian now living in Paris, and it was shot on the island of Faro in the Baltic Sea between Sweden and Russia. That's the same island where Ingmar Bergman shoots most of his films, and the bleak landscape will look familiar if you've seen some Bergman films. The movie stars Erland Josephson as a man who lives a quiet, closed-off existence on the island, and one day he experiences what he has long dreaded: bombers streaking overhead on their way to begin World War III. The movie now almost enters into this man's own soul, where he performs an examination of conscience to see whether his own sins and failings are being punished. Then he offers a sacrifice, his own life, to buy back a few seconds of the precious time of the universe, which would mean that the missiles had never been sent. I think Tarkovsky is trying to do a very interesting thing here. He's not suggesting that that man can change the world with his sacrifice, but what he is suggesting is that this man's whole world exists within his own mind, and that the nuclear destruction is the result of mankind not being as good, as noble, as honest, and as fair as it should be. So in a way, the man is asking for a second chance for himself and for all of us. The movie is not simply about nuclear war. It's about the war between good and evil in one man's soul. It's almost as if the movie says nuclear war comes out of the evil in our soul. If we can cure our souls, we can clear our destruction. The sacrifice is difficult and powerful and very, very effective, and I must say, it's also very long. It might be an ordeal for some people to sit through. I got into it.
I got into it, and I got out of it, and I got into it. It's 2.5 hours long, and I think the film is quite uneven. There are some very beautiful things in there. There's a beautiful monologue by Erland Josephson when it almost plays like a great Bergman film. Mm-hmm. But then they bring in other side characters, members of his family, neighbors, maids, and all that, and I thought all those characters were pointless, really had nothing to say, nothing as eloquent, and I felt that the film broke down every time we got away from this one man. There's some beautiful images. There's a gorgeous shot of snow and leaves being blown across by the wind, and it's almost like a shot of the earth, just a firestorm going right across and wiping out the face of the earth. The film is great beauty and great monologues, but then it has a whole bunch of other stuff in it which makes the film very uneven.
Well, maybe you ought to say something about Tarkovsky, who directed it. I've seen at least 3 of his other films, Nostalgia, Solaris, and Andrei Rublev, that film about the building of the giant bell in the Middle Ages, one of the greatest films ever made. Tarkovsky's films are always long. And one of the things I think he's trying to do is make his films so long that we lose touch with the person that we were when we came into the theater, in a way, that we come entirely into his universe, and he completely absorbs us with these images, including the downtime, including the boring time, so if it is boring, so that by the end he's got us reduced to the point where he can give us the message that he's trying to give us. In other words, it's the opposite of entertaining us. He's trying to absorb us.
Yeah, well, Roger, I got the message because in his opening speech it's very clear what he's talking about, and he has, and the nightmare of the destruction of the earth. I got the message very early. I'm just saying that let's take an editing to this film, and we would have a great film. We would have a great film if we reduced the characters.
Well, I certainly can recommend it anyway, especially to anyone who finds that kind of subject matter interesting, because it's not just a propaganda film. It's very thoughtful. Split on The Sacrifice, the visually stunning story of one man's attempt to keep the world from self-destruction. I think it's a great film. Gene found it spotty. He thought it was better looking than it was acted. So I really am really strong for The Sacrifice, and also 52 Pickup.
Okay, and I'm tough to please.